Frank. What's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park.
Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to die tonight.
I like death.
Greetings, ghouls, and welcome to Minute 10 of Do You Want to Party, a Movies by Minute treatment of the 1985 horror classic, The Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy. Minute 10 begins with the movie titles over a melting corpse, and ends with the body under a sheet starting to stir. Now, as minutes go, there isn't much to this particular minute, as we first watch the sped-up footage of a corpse, later to be known as Tar Man, and then we follow the yellow sulfur smoke as the camera pans away from the container and over the two prone bodies of Frank and Freddy. The camera starts panning upward as we see the small cellar area is filling up with the yellow smoke as it starts making its way through the warehouse via the air duct system. We crossfade to a static shot of an intake vent sucking in the smoke like a vacuum, and then a cutaway of the building's walls shows the path of its metal piping which the smoke is traveling along, which inevitably branches out into different routes. While following one particular direction, the furnace system is superimposed over top, signaling the continuous spread of the toxic gas. Eventually, the camera starts panning down on a particular vent shaft, only to have it end up in the freezer with, thankfully, a single corpse hanging from hooks in its ears. Once the camera's inside this said freezer, it goes from starting at the exit vent, spewing the toxin out. The camera pans down the transparent plastic-wrapped corpse. We cut to a close-up of the corpse's right hand as it starts twitching, and that's where the minute ends. Now, what we've just described is the action of what happens in the universe of the movie. Now, for the audience, we get our opening credits, now a full 10 minutes into the movie. Also, the trioxin theme, composed and performed by Francis Haynes, continues its familiar music. Also, while within the last 2 seconds of the last minute, the title card of The Return of the Living Dead fades into existence. We can get a full time to see it now and for an additional 5 seconds. Then we are introduced to casts and a few crew members, the first being starring Clu Gallagher. We know that he plays Bert, no matter what we might have said in previous minutes. Born on November 16th, 1928, he was 55 at the time of the filming and had a huge resume of acting in TV and movies, both prior to and quite a bit after. Next, starring James Karen, is Frank. Sometimes referred to as Jimmy by those that he works with. He was born on November 28th in 1923, making him 60 while filming. And like Clue, James had had a very lucrative acting career before and after The Return of the Living Dead in both TV and movies. Up next is someone that we have barely spoken about, seeing he's still a bit before his appearance, but like Clue and James, starring Don Calfa, is next. He plays Ernie and comes from the same acting background. Born December 3rd, 1939, he was 44 at the time of shooting and enjoyed a vigorous acting career both before and after this movie in both TV and movies. But we'll deep dive into each of those actors and characters later. Now we'll just glance over the cast portion of these opening credits. Our next credit is also starring, the card listing the following: Tom Matthews, who plays Freddy. Lena Quigley is Trash. Miguel Hunes, no junior at this time, is Spider. Beverly Rudolph is Tina. Brian Peck is Scuzz. Jules Shepard is Casey. John Philbin is Chuck. Mark Venturini is Suicide. And that basically squares away all of our punks. The next card gets us co-starring. Jonathan Terry is Colonel Glover. Colleen Cordell is Glover's wife. After that, we get the card with featuring David Bond is Radio Corps number 2. Derek Bryce is Gunnery Sergeant. Paul Cloud is Cop number 2. Michael Crabtree is Riot Cop number 2. Robert Craighead is Cop number 1. James Soundroll is Paramedic number 2. Drew Deegan is Paramedic number 1. Lee Drake is Dispatcher. John Durbin is Radio Corps number 1. Ed Krieger is Riot Cop number 3. Rob Libman is Tax Squad Captain. Alan Trotman is Tarman. John Stewart West is Riot Cop number 1. Then we have the person that got them all this gig, casting Stanzi Stokes on her own card. Followed by that, the card Production Associate Grames Jennings. And finally we get the card Film Editor Robert Gordon. According to the script, which is a story and script by Dan O'Bannon, this is currently the revised version from October 1983, based on a story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Ruki, and Russell Steiner. So between the screen and the script, there are a few slight changes. However, this sequence of this minute is so short that I'm just going to read the excerpt from the script. Again, like mentioned in the previous minute, the camera cranes up over the top of the tank, looking down through the little window. Inside, the corpse is beginning to dissolve, boil away to a black, nasty liquid right in front of our eyes as the oxygen hits it. The gas in the tank has lost some of its pressure and is no longer squirting out like a hose. Instead, it's fuming up out of the cracks of the metal, rising up and rolling along the ceiling towards the basement stairwell. The smoky gas rises up from the basement steps and passes out into the warehouse. Interior, warehouse, afternoon. The gas rises out of the open basement door and travels across the floor of the warehouse, rising to saturate everything. Some of the gas rolls along the floor and enters the open door of the cold locker. Early in the written script, it was mentioned that when closing the door that you had to make sure it closes. However, Frank and Freddy are unaware of the door remaining open after they had left the area. Interior cold locker, afternoon. The noxious toxic gas crawls in around the edge of the door and curls up over the plastic wrapped cadaver hanging like a suit in the laundry. The cadaver starts to twitch, dully towards it, dissolve to main title sequence, New Age music, The Return of the Living Dead. Over on the commentary track with director and writer Dan O'Bannon and production designer William Stout. Dan O'Bannon continues the conversation from the last minute by saying that they subjected the wax figure to great heat and sped up the playback to get the quick melt look, then superimposed regular flowing smoke to make it seem deliberately deteriorating before your eyes in real time. He also was pleased that of the effects once the eyes were exposed because he definitely wanted the eyes open. He concludes the explanation by mentioning that the glass breaking was a happy accident and only happened because of the high heat. William Stout then mentions how he used to style the letters of the titles like Ralph Steedman used for the Hunter S. Thompson covers. As the camera now traces along the piping through the building, Dan O'Bannon then mentions how he remembers storyboarding the sequence and how sometimes he likes to turn inanimate objects into characters. In essence, he was making the smoke a character as you follow the progress through the pipes and down onto the corpse, and how a little later on he did the same thing with the smoke into the clouds. Random roll facts. As stated in previous episodes, IMDb has listed 108 facts about the Return of the Living Dead, and when we call upon this category, we use a random number generator to give us 3 facts from that list. This episode's facts are number 64. The frost on the walls of the freezer room was actually Christmas tree flocking. O'Bannon wishes they had the budget so they could have afford to drop the temperature so you could see the actor's breath. As we brought up in the commentary track from previous minutes, seems the longer we go, the more rehashing of information will be made. Random fact number 72. O'Bannon wanted a tan suit for Ernie, played by Don Calfa. But wardrobe got him the wrong color, with a quote of, "Spielberg would have gotten a tan running suit." Well, if you haven't seen the movie yet, I guess minor spoilers for a character you haven't seen yet. Kind of weird how we've maybe casually mentioned the character, but for some strange reason, both Ernie and Don Calfa are prominently discussed in this particular episode. Random roll fact number 38. Colonel Glover's house wasn't dressed by production at all. The garish display is just how it came. Again, a quote, "That's someone's taste." Hopefully in the next few minutes we delve deeper into the Colonel's abode. So that being said, we've come to the end of this week's episode. I want to thank you for currently following me along this journey that's only going to get better from this point on. As usual, if you have anything that you want to point out about this or any other minute, be sure to send us an email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. And we can continue the conversation or even roll it into a future minute. Speaking of minutes, I've only just realized that I have neglected pointing out the originators of the Movies by Minute podcasts. The Star Wars Minute originated by Alex Robinson and Pete the Retailer, where they currently aren't doing anything new Star Wars-wise. They have covered all theatrical movies, Disney Plus shows. At the current time in the space-time continuum, Skeleton Crew is right around the corner, as well as special presentations and a slew of guests hosting on numerous other Movies by Minute podcasts. With a collective that is grown to 300-plus titles, there's a good chance of finding a movie, other than this one, that you can enjoy, and if not, consider making one yourself. And the community itself is very welcoming and informative. All that being said, once again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll just leave you with, see you next Wednesday. You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends.